Hello, I'm Kate Mackay, Associate Film Curator here at the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive, and I'm delighted to welcome you to a conversation with Rubika Shah about her film White Riot, which is available now as one of BAMPFA's Watch From Home offerings. You can find that at bampfa.org. White Riot chronicles the efforts of a gang of British music fans to counter the rising tide of racism, growing popularity of the UK's right-wing National Front. It's a great reminder of the power of grassroots organizing, of creativity, publishing, and features a terrific soundtrack with music by The Clash, The X-Ray Specs, Steel Pulse, Tom Robinson, Alien Culture, and more. And it's made with a brilliant DIY cut and paste punk aesthetic that reflects temporary hoarding, the Rock Against Racism publication, and really the punk aesthetic of the time. Rubika Shah is a writer, director, and Screen International Star of Tomorrow, whose films have screened at Sundance, Berlin, Tribeca, and Hot Docs. Her mini doc about David Bowie screened in the UK cinemas through Picturehouse and was featured in The Guardian, Rolling Stone, and ID Vice, and in Vice. Her debut feature, which is White Riot, which we're screening at BAMPFA, was showcased at the Great 8 at Cannes in 2018, and she's also working on an expanded version of her David Bowie documentary. And we are really fortunate to have with us here today to speak with Rubika, Vale, who's a veteran of the punk scene in San Francisco, an editor, writer, interviewer, and musician. In 1977, Vale founded Search and Destroy, San Francisco's first punk rock publication, which was published at City Lights Bookstore, where Vale worked, and was funded by $100 each from Lawrence Ferlinghetti and Allen Ginsberg. In 1980, Vale launched the publication Research to chronicle underground culture, and he is likely the longest lasting and still active punk publisher. So the perfect person to discuss White Riot with Rubika today. And to set up the film, I'm just going to show, we're just going to take a look at a clip that happens early on in the film. And this clip features Red Saunders, who's talking about the energy of the band The Clash, which he discovered when he went to photograph a gig, and also the rise of the National Front in the UK. So we'll have a look at that now.
Would he come down and photograph the punk night? Here I am down the ICA, and suddenly The Clash come on, and bang! 15 minutes of unbelievable energy and power and volume and lyrics about unemployment and youth alienation and like, Jesus Christ, and then they were gone, they were off. The economic situation was really bad. The IMF had moved in. They were putting pressure on wage cuts and social services cuts. The whole atmosphere was really dark and hard. The right-wing press playing the same old tune. We're going to be swamped, we're going to be mobbed.
To where would you repatriate those immigrants who were born here?
To where they wanted to go. In most cases, they are the citizens of their countries of origin, although born in this country. A person would be physically seized and deported like a person being taken on board Majesty's ships of war at the end of the 18th century.
So where would you draw the line, Mr. Powell?
I draw it short of that.
The National Front were growing incredibly. Webster was a clever organizer. He started to march in the right places, make the right noises. They were, as they said, kicking their way onto the headlines.
Keep our country free from invasion when the invaders have got black, brown and yellow faces.
Rubika, we need to know where you were born, where you grew up, just as a basic, and where you live.
Absolutely. So I was born in the UK, in the Midlands, and I grew up here, and I now live I still live in the UK, so in London.
Okay, so that's succinct. But I said earlier that to me, nothing in the world is harder to do than to make a feature film. And I need to know how you came to this position at such an incredibly early age.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so kind of you. So I embarked on this sort of crazy journey to tell this story about 5 years ago. Actually, it's probably a little over 5 years. I was looking for stories, actually, sort of stories, inspirational stories of Britain in the 70s. You know, I've always been a really big music fan, and I'm sort of also really obsessed with Archive. And I came across the footage of the Clash playing at Victoria Park with this beautiful 35mm footage that of them performing, you know, a whole bunch of songs. And I was just intrigued, like, how did this happen? Like, what was this concert or festival, I should say? Well, it was Rock Against Racism. And I thought, oh, this happened in the UK. Oh, this is some sort of movement that happened here, because we always look to America for those big cultural moments, you know, those big kind of pop culture movements, you know. So I just didn't expect it. And so as I was you know, researching more and more, I found out that it was actually a small group of people that had got together in 1976 and that had this idea to actually just put on like not even a concert, to put on a little sort of gig in their local pub that they were going to call Rock Against Racism, you know, and just to see, you know, how many people are going to turn up. And then, yeah, within 2 years, they've got, you know, this hundreds of thousands of people from all over the UK, you know, marching from London to Victoria Park and being part of this huge, you know, cultural sort of awakening.
Okay, so I could see how you wanted to make a film that had never been made before. And I also think that historically, you could say the voices of the underclass, the people who are not in power, are very rarely represented. And there's a big hole there to fill for future historians. I mean, your film is for the future, you know. And so I need to know, like, how you learned how to be a filmmaker. Most of us aren't, you know.
Yeah, it was an interesting journey actually for me, because I didn't have the conventional sort of route into filmmaking. You know, I didn't go to film school. I didn't actually figure out that I wanted to be a filmmaker until a little bit into my career. So I'd been working in music. I'd been working at a touring company, and then I worked at Universal Music. And it was there that I was like, this is it. I need to make films. I need to figure out how I'm going to do this. And then I kind of figured out that I wanted to have this like big break from, you know, I wanted to like almost like shut a door and open a new door. It was a bit of a sort of metaphorical moment of I need to say goodbye to that, and I need to do something new. I need to sort of like put a new head on, as it were. And then I decided to, you know, that's it. I'm gonna try and be a filmmaker. And at that point, I was struggling to even get anyone to like take me seriously. You know, I started then by default because nobody would, you know, I was like, you know, I wanted to direct films, but I didn't really know, you know, where to start. At that point, I started editing, and actually through learning the craft of editing, I was able to sort of cultivate a way of earning some money firstly, which I think was really important, just to be able to sort of eat and live. I was in Australia at the time, so I got some work with the Sydney Morning Herald. It's a big newspaper there, and they were just launching an online video platform. So I wince when I think of it. I would hate to watch some of those early pieces. Probably not very good, but they gave me a shot, and I sort of learnt the craft of filmmaking, I guess, through editing, and then through shooting, and then being able to go to film festivals, which was, I think, a brilliant place to watch films and meet other filmmakers and start to understand, cinematic language and story and those sorts of like ingredients that are the sort of cinematic language.
Well, did you have any friends, or there must have been someone helping you? It couldn't have just been you, right? Or was it all you?
Oh, look, I can't take complete credit. There were, I started working with my producer, actually, on who I've made Let's Dance Bury Down Under, White Riot, and White Riot London. So we've made 3 films together and a bunch of other projects, and we started working together actually right from the outset. And he's a journalist, and so he was also sort of instrumental in helping me figure out that, there was this, at the time, they were making a big push into visual video news, and also sort of encouraging me to think about, like, well, what's the skill set you need to be a filmmaker? Well, the more you can do yourself, the better position you're in, because it means that you have a certain amount of freedom, and artistic freedom is really, I think, quite key to be able to, to put your perspective across. So we would go to film festivals like Cannes, where else we go? We went to TIFF, a bunch of music festivals as well, and we would film interviews with people. And that was a really great way of, like, firstly getting to, like I said earlier, watch films and stuff, but being able to, like, learn how to set up and shoot quickly, I think, is something that, is really, really vital for documentaries, because sometimes you just don't have the luxury. I mean, in White Riot, we had the luxury of, doing these amazing, big setup shoots with Red and Roger and Ruth and a bunch of others. But quite often in documentary, you don't have the budget to do that. So, being able to film yourself, I think, is something that is really helpful. I did do some short courses as well, I should say, as well. I wasn't completely blind. I did some short courses in filmmaking, and I did one in New York, actually, which was fun. I'm not sure how much I learned, but maybe subconsciously I learned some stuff that I carried through. But I remember at the time thinking, being absolutely bamboozled by, film and, aperture and all the technical side of it. But you know what they say, practice makes perfect. And, I just kept going, I guess. I had that sort of feeling in me that I wanted, that drive, that I think one does when they want to do something like this.
It seems like, I hate to say this, are you rich? I mean, it seems
wish,
like
yeah.
you can travel all over the world and just blithely and learn this here and learn that. In fact, where did you go to school in New York?
I did a summer school. I can't even remember where it was. It was just one of these summer school things. So I'd been working at Universal in Australia. And I'd saved up, basically, because I had this idea that I wanted to, I just wanted to do something big, like lots of people go traveling, or, they travel around the world and stuff. I thought, I'm going to send myself off to New York for a few months. Look, I was living in like a sort of flat share type thing. It wasn't luxury at all, unfortunately. But I think it made for a richer experience. I had a great time. I met a lot of people. It was fun. I came out of it actually in debt, funnily enough, because I hadn't saved enough money to pay for myself. I really hadn't budgeted very well. And then I went back to Australia for a bit, because in the UK, lots of people go back and forth between, I wouldn't say back and forth, but it's quite common for people to go to Australia for a year or so to work. Part of it's called a working holiday thing you do in your 20s. So yeah, anyway, I digress.
Well, no, I mean, you're giving some illumination. I'm interested in yourself because I think I don't know, it seems like you could like travel by yourself. You know, you're young. You know, that's a little scary, isn't it? I mean, just things like that. I mean, you're independent, but maybe your parents had some role in helping you build this inner core of strength. That I don't know. Tell me.
It's interesting. Yeah, I guess I'd not really thought about it like that. They, I mean, we traveled around a lot when we were younger. I mean, my parents are, you know, I was born in the UK, but, you know, I've kind of dual identity in that sense. So I traveled around a lot when I was younger. I lived in, my dad worked overseas for a while. So I lived in Saudi Arabia for a little bit.
Wow.
And so that I think that maybe that sort of gave me the confidence to, you know, to be able to just feel like I could get up there and travel because I'd seen my parents do it, you know. And my dad worked overseas a few times, and it was only the third time that we went with him, which is when I lived in Saudi Arabia and had that experience going to an American school there, actually. So I actually had an American accent when I was a teenager.
Well, the British accent has a lot more prestige all over the world. You know that.
Oh, thank you. I don't know. I think we're all in awe of each other.
So, you know, I'm just curious how you focused on, oh, you told us you saw this clash footage, maybe 35 millimeter beautiful. Was that filmed at Victoria Park? Was that the footage?
It's the one, we've got it at the end of the film.
At the end,
yeah, and it's that footage was filmed as part of the film that was made around the clash. This is before they got big, actually. And they filmed it all on 35 mil. It's incredible. It's the whole film is beautiful. Like it's just stunning, and it includes lots of like behind the scenes you know, moments with them where you get to see like they are the real deal, basically.
So actually it was this footage that somehow brought you to focus on making a film starring Rock Against Racism called White Riot.
Well, it was one of the things that I felt like, what is this? I was looking at the time. I'd made a film about David Bowie and Let's Dance, and the Aboriginal girl in the Let's Dance video that he made in the early 80s. So it was a really big hit on MTV. And so we, when I was living in Australia, I found the Aboriginal girl with my producing partner, with Ed Gibbs. We found her living, just living regular sort of life. So we made this film about her, and then, you know, that sort of was a springboard into thinking, well, what other sort of archival moments are out there in terms of, you know, concerts, music, you know, thinking about like, you know, I think the thing that I love about the story of Let's Dance is that it was a pop culture moment, and it's a side of Bowie actually that people don't really know. And that's something that attracted me also to this story of Rock Against Racism, because it was a movement that happened over 5 years and had never been made into a documentary, not even in the UK, not even a sort of, you know, a TV music documentary had been made about this, which I just thought was incredible, considering, you know, even after the Victoria Park Carnival, you know, they went on to have lots of other gigs with heaps of other, you know, Pete Townsend was part of it, the Buzzcocks, you know, the list is endless. So I guess I was like, well, this is my chance to tell a story that reflects the sort of ideas that I'm, you know, want to explore as well.
Good, because I don't think that Rock Against Racism were exactly enormous in San Francisco / America. And, you know, I published, as you know, I'll hold this up, Search and Destroy.
Yeah.
From 1977 to 79, it was the first punk rock only publication here. And it was aimed to interview people, you know, primary source. You want you don't want to have a bunch of star journalists writing about something. You want people who are starting the movement talking, as like you got with Red, whom I'd never heard of. And my only experience with Rock Against Racism is 3 of my issues of Search and Destroy, people talked about Rock Against Racism in their interviews, but they're mainly promoting their bands, of course. And then I got, you know, a long report on the Victoria concert. And I guess, so you filled in a lot of gaps when you said 76. I mean, I didn't think Rock Against Racism, I didn't know who they were. You know, and I only heard about them in 1978. And I might say that someone richer than me went to England and brought back a bunch of Rock Against Racism buttons, and I got one, being the Search and Destroy editor. But we didn't really, but we had these kids here, teenagers, a lot of them, trying to start their own kind of Rock Against Racism offshoot. So you're right, in that they did have an influence, maybe bigger than a lot of people know. And they started a group here called New Youth Productions, and they actually put on a Clash concert here at a place next to the Fillmore no one remembers, called the People's Temple, or the Temple Beautiful, rather. Anyway, this is ancillary to your project. But I'm so happy that you're a woman making this too. I mean, surely that means something, you know.
I hope so. I mean, if it means one thing, it means that other women can just go out there and make a film. Like, it's, you know, I think once you have the tools, you can go and do it. It's actually not, it's not that difficult in the sense of, you know, it's a process of piecing things together. I ended up editing this film as well. You know, it ended up being like a sort of, the last 2 years was a real immersive kind of journey of, like, you know, making it and then having to edit it. So that was difficult. But I learned how to edit a feature doc, you know, by doing it. You know, and you know, the film actually went through many different incarnations of, you know, different, from what it was when it started to what it was at the end. Made me realize how collaborative actually filmmaking is. It really is a collaborative journey, and that, you know, I just don't think it's possible to make it on your own. And like, you know, like the story that you were recounting, you know, it was all about, you know, lots of people getting together. And interesting that there was a sort of offshoot here, albeit under a different, in America, you know, albeit with a different name. You know, I think that's brilliant to hear that story, actually, that anecdote of the one you just mentioned. And I'll be sure to pass it on, actually, to Red and those guys when I mention it to them. I think they'll be absolutely chuffed that their little badges made it to San Francisco.
Well, you know, it shows the power of the logo too. I hope you have a strong logo for your film. I mean, you know, something that can be put on a button. It actually can, at least used to be able to go viral in a very compact but powerful way. You know, when people wear the buttons, you know what I mean? It's personal.
Exactly. Yeah, it's lived on. Like, it's, you know, it's incredible, isn't it? That I think everywhere around the world, people pretty much will see there's some sort of solidarity in that little button.
Yes. So now wait, you weren't even born, I bet, when you know, Rock Against Racism was existing. Should we go there?
I'm not going to give away my age, but yeah, I wasn't there. Big disclaimer. So it's totally was like a big, you know, deep dive for me, going like into that era. You know, it was quite personal because, you know, my dad grew up here, so, you know, it was a sort of interesting, you know, figuring out, like, you know, what were they doing before I was around? Well, this is the world that they lived in. So although it's a story of Red and, you know, Ruth and Roger and, you know, the Rock Against Racism cohort, it's also a story about, you know, the UK at that moment, and what a violent place it was for, you know, for a lot of people.
Well, you know, the film really shows that there actually are kind of huge and maybe, but yet basically not so huge differences between, say, the living in the UK and here. Like, we didn't have, you know, a national front here. Like that's kind of scary. And also that whole skinhead thing was pretty scary to me, seeing it in your film. We didn't have it here so much, at least. And you're sort of illuminating a huge class difference, for want of a better word, between England and America. Like, it's, you know, and I know you're trying to telegraph this deeper issues in the film, having to do with, you know, I guess in America, you know, we don't have the word class so much, even though it's probably really there in reality, tied to extreme wealth. But in England, there's all these nuances everywhere. You know, people can tell where you're from as soon as you open your mouth, like, oh, you're from Cockney, or, you know, that's a lower class accent, right? You know, things like that.
Yeah, it's crazy that we're still weighed down with that, because it's true. It's like seeped into our like everyday lives. Like, it's incredible that, you know, something like your accent, or you know, if you say where you're from, it will, you know, people can tell. But it's like this whole idea of class. You know, the disturbing thing about it is it's not going anywhere. You know, it's like it's this sort of hangover from, I don't know if it's a hangover from empire, but it's certainly a hangover from history, you know, that Britain can't really shake off. And, you know, and class itself is so complicated, because it's not just about being rich and poor, it's everything in between. And it's like, you know, are you also, you know, are you defined by your class? Can you break out of your class? You know, if you're born in a certain area, but then you come into wealth, what class are you then? Can you buy your way into, you know, and this is a ridiculous notion of upper class. You know, what is upper class? I don't like it. I mean, I wish that Britain was more, you know, had that sort of spirit of America, a bit more egalitarian, you know, where you can, I guess, a bit more, I mean, I don't know how true this is, but this sort of like work hard, you know, and anybody can make it sort of attitude. You're not defined by where you were born, for example.
Well, that's true, but you know, there is an advantage to growing up rich in England. You actually know a hell of a lot more. You travel a hell of a lot more. You have a much larger knowledge of luxury consumer goods, for example, which includes luxury consumer experiences. So you are definitely more knowledgeable if you're raised rich in England, I'm guessing. I mean, just saying.
I mean, I reckon that people now have the opportunity to travel. When I went to Australia, actually, most of the people that settle there, most of the Brits that settled there are from the north of England. You know, if you sort of look at it in a really crass way, you know, of like maybe the south is wealthier than the north because of London. You know, London is the like sort of financial capital of Britain. You know, but actually when you go to somewhere like Australia, you find out that actually most of the people that are traveling from the UK are Scottish or Irish or from the north. You know, so that, well, we're in a good place now, I think, where people are traveling more and people have that sort of, you know, ideal where they can go out and do that. But then lots of people don't as well. You know, it's I guess it really just depends on the person, and what they kind of feel and where they feel their drive is, you know, and where they want to go.
Well, you know, okay, I have some reactions to your film.
Oh no!
no. The first one is that it was an incredible assemblage of what I call, what is the phrase I use? great forensic history gathering. Like, you know, you had to pull sources of your footage from everywhere. And I suppose one person led you to another, etc. But you tell me, it seems like that was not an easy thing to gather all that footage and put it in one piece.
It was an absolute nightmare because we were, you know, we were given bits of footage from different people. And most of it actually was, we found out later, you know, we'd used it to edit with, but it was actually, you know, it was library archive technically, which means that it was archive that belonged to one of these big, you know, TV channels back in the, you know, 70s. So we had to go back, try and find out who would license it. And then we were, you know, absolutely bulk at the cost of like, you know, £3,000 a minute, thinking, well, we can't afford that. This is a low budget independent documentary that we're basically making ourselves, and having to basically haggle with a lot of people. But luckily, you know, it is Rock Against Racism. A lot, you would believe how many people were there at the concert. And if they weren't, and they were around at that time, people were like, we remember that. We remember, like, you know, what Rock Against Racism were trying to do, like, we'll support the project. So we had a lot of goodwill actually from archivists and, you know, archive owners. And so, you know, that at the end of it, I think probably end of last year, so the film's finished, it's done. And we have to go back through and we have to start cataloguing it and, you know, figuring out what bits of archive belong to who. You know, we're looking at another 2 years of doing that. It was incredible, like having to go through, because we hadn't, you know, we were just making the film. We were on this train of just, you know, let's just keep going. We want to make the film. We want to make the best film that we can. You know, we want to try and get into a festival to try and, you know, raise awareness of the issues in the film. And, you know, we're not thinking about like the archive and where it's all come from and who we're going to have to go to license it, and all the sort of boring stuff that has to get done, because at the end of the day, you know, you've got to do it and you've got to pay for it as well. So yeah, that was a really big job.
I guess you have a file cabinet full of releases and things.
Yeah, it's all there. It's incredible, actually. I have to hats off to Ed, actually, because he was really sort of, you know, spearheading that and, you know, meticulously going through contracts and stuff like that. I mean, it's a big job. You know, now we understand the pain of like being an archive producer and why they charge so much.
But you obviously shot very, very well original footage, interview footage. Well, it's because you have a background of quick interview setup, grab the footage and run. And yeah. So are you a musician too? Because it seems very musically satisfying, and music is very important, much more than people think.
Absolutely. Like we worked with so the composer actually that I worked with previously, in my previous film, I worked with her again to do the score, but there was also all the punk music from the time. So we knew that there was a couple of songs that we had to have, you know, I had to have The Clash, you know, and we had to have X-Ray Specs, and, you know, we had to have some Steel Pulse in there. And because it's a film really about punk, you know, we knew that the film was going to be driven by some like big punk staples. But we also wanted some like sort of lesser known punk songs in there. So a band called 999.
Oh yeah.
A band called Alien Culture. You know, there were two bands where we just were blown away by their music. We hadn't heard it before. Like, I hadn't heard it before. And I was like, you know, this has to make it in the film. You know, it's sort of, the idea for the rhythm of the film is that it would feel like, you know, it would sweep you up and sort of, you know, take you in with it. So that's what we were trying to do by using, you know, punk songs at certain intervals of the film.
Yeah, but you also were smart enough to include Tom Robinson, who actually was a big deal for the gay Bay area, you know, the Bay Area, and he came and did a concert here. I think it was late 78 or 79. So we at least got exposed to him in the Bay Area. but you were smart enough to include him to, I hate to sound patronizing, but to bring in the gay dimension to the punk liberation movement.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, this is the thing about punk, isn't it? It's, it's super inclusive, and that's everybody, and I think this is an important sort of point to make. Largely this is a film about anti-racist, activists, but within that, there's that sort of ideas of intersectionality and, thinking about Tom Robbins and everything that he stood for at the time, and just his music is so good, was like, you couldn't make a film about rock against racism without using Tom Robinson. He was actually one of the first supporters to come on board with rock against racism, because he made the link straight away. And so that's what's incredibly important actually to the story of rock against racism. And he often talks about it on his radio show. I don't know if you listen to it. He's on Radio 6, BBC Radio 6 in the UK.
Wow.
You probably be able to get it over there actually. And so he's still fighting the good cause. He's still very vocal about various different activities.
I had wondered what had happened to him, but he has a UK radio audience all these years.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
He doesn't do shows anymore, does he? Or I haven't
I
heard of
he
shows.
Does.
Oh, good.
He's not recently, because of the pandemic, but he's definitely very he does loads of gigs actually. So it's very, it's brilliant that he's still out there touring. And I hope as soon as this pandemic finishes, we can have a big rock against racism party.
Good luck with that. I'm a pessimist. I've heard that it's not going to be over till end of 2025. And I'm thinking, well, so what? We live with it. We survive.
Yeah. I'm a semi-pessimist then. I was saying 2023.
What, split meat in the middle or something? It's kind of funny. We had a kind of long report in my Search and Destroy on that Clash gig at Victoria. I should try and send it to you or something, but
I would love to see it. Absolutely.
Well, it says 80,000 people from all over England and Europe turned out for the first outdoor punk rock concert in the history of punkdom under the disguise of Rock Against Racism and the Anti-Nazi League. Bands to play were X-Ray Specs, Clash, Steel Pulse, and Tom Robinson. So many people gutted Victoria Park and Hackney that it was hard to hear if there were other bands. The Clash came on early in the day and got very little response. Jimmy Percy of Sham 69 joined in to sing White Riot. Tom Robinson would Sing If You're Glad to Be Gay, got nearly everyone clapping and singing along. A large gay switchboard banner was flying over the crowd and could be seen for miles. The march started at Trafalgar Square, downtown London, and led to Victoria Park, Hackney, over 5 miles away. Anyway, on the news that day, it is reported that when the first marchers reached Victoria, the end of the march still hadn't left Trafalgar Square. I wonder how the elections will be affected by this phenomenal display of anti-Nazism, anti-national front. Anyway, the weather was warm and lovely. It's been drizzling for months here in London. There's your report.
It has to end with the weather, doesn't it? Otherwise, it's not a British report. A nation obsessed with class and the weather.
Oh, wow. So
that's fantastic.
If I had any criticism, it's because I'm an American, a stupid American, and I did have trouble with just understanding British accents here and there. And I said, I wish there were subtitles there in these spots, because I just didn't know what humans were saying. But the music's so powerful. It's a powerful film. So, that's just a small critique. And the other area that I was very vague in, because I'm a historian and I love dates, And I thought, how come I didn't hear about Rock Against Racism until 1978? You know, if they started in 76, and somehow I wish there'd been a little more of a timeline to satisfy me, the historian, but I think most people wouldn't even notice who watch it.
Yeah, because it starts in 1976, and actually, one thing with the subtitles, actually, I did wonder if it would get subtitled in America.
Please
because
do
some
it.
of it is, yeah, I wondered about that actually. We talked about it, but it's with, I guess it's something that we can mention to the distributor actually to see, because there are subtitles. So maybe there are certain parts which are
certain parts.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's all I was going to say actually. And so, you know, just with the subtitling, I guess, because you know, people are talking, you know, very quickly and in quite thick, you know, various accents, because it's sort of, you know, it's spread all across the UK. So I know, especially towards the end, there's some kids in Archive talking in quite a thick Glaswegian accent, which is Scottish. And even I had to go back through it a few times.
Well, that was my only visceral reaction. I'm not a professional movie critic, but you know, I'm just like anyone else. If the movie's compelling, I just get sucked in, and I don't even realize it until it's over.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks to music. Music is so powerful, you know, engaging our emotions, not just our intellect.
Absolutely.
So, wow. Well, I hope you expand, well, you are going to expand the David Bowie, because there's a lot of David Bowie fans in America. And you'll definitely reach an audience if you expand that.
Definitely, the mini documentary that we did actually did really well in America, and so I don't know what's happening next with it, because it's we've been busy working on this, and you know, I worked on 2 other projects over summer, so yeah, kind of just trying to figure out next steps and what to do next. So yeah, I haven't actually thought about that project for a while.
God, I wish you'd do a documentary on X-ray specs. We loved them at our Search and Destroy office. That song, Old Bondage Up Yours, we were constantly playing that, and people were singing along with it like they meant it.
Really? Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it?
It's crazy. You know, it's crazy, but I know I'm not truly white myself, but I never realized that, you know, the singer Polystyrene was a person of color. Isn't that crazy?
I guess
I didn't realize it till the Rock Against Racism context.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because I guess she's I'm not sure if she's quite light skinned, isn't she? But then she's definitely mixed race, and and so she you know, I think her support of Rock Against Racism was unwavering in that sense. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think music has that effect, doesn't it? Music is kind of colorblind, isn't it? Really, you know.
I thought punk was pretty colorblind.
Exactly.
I mean, reggae was really big in San Francisco, along with punk. You know, they were not untied together.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, and so it's that way with music, isn't it? So when you see your favorite artist, or when I see my favorite artist, I don't generally see them for being whatever nationality they are. It's sort of like the music is, you know, takes you to a higher place.
Boy, I'll say that's a good ending. I think you tapped that, and I think people want to transcend, especially now during COVID.
Absolutely.
So it's a good thing your film came out. I certainly hope it gets played everywhere. It got featured heavily in San Francisco by the neighborhood favorite theater called the Roxy. I don't know if you know that, but they have very loyal fans, and they have members actually that support them. Otherwise, how can a theater keep going when no one comes?
Yeah, that's so exciting. I'm really glad to hear that, actually. That's brilliant, because cinemas a lot of them are closing here as well, and just don't know what the future holds.
Everywhere around the world, these huge chains, are declaring bankruptcy. So yeah, I guess I'm glad PFA came aboard and hosted you, or I wouldn't be here. And so PFA, I've gone there practically thousands of times over the last decades because they offer such high quality programming. So I'm glad I'm glad you're in that context there. And they have a beautiful theater. And they have a
such
lot
a
of
shame. Yeah.
they have a lot of directors in person. Like if it weren't for COVID, you'd probably be there in person in Berkeley and I'd be seeing you.
Oh, that was the dream. It just seems so, like another world, like the world has literally turned upside down in a year.
It has.
Yeah, so hopefully at some point, I think I'm hoping my hope with this kind of film is that it will still sort of have be pertinent in a few years. So we'll have an opportunity to maybe do some in-person Q&As, in a few years, hopefully.
You can do them now. I think Zoom is not too bad for that. I've only been on it 4 times, but as long as you have real people able to ask you questions that are not pre-scripted, I think you'll enjoy that. They're real.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you.
Just like my questions are real.
Yeah, I'm glad. It's nice to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm really glad you did this really arduous, detailed, amazing historical project. You're reclaiming history, because one of my aphorisms is, if you want a different future, you need a different past.
Oh,
and that's
interesting.
why it's very important that your film be circulated now, I think. Especially with this, the climate all over the world has gotten more conservative.
Yeah.
I don't even want to go there, but we need to counter that.
Absolutely. And if there's one thing that people can take away, it's that, anyone can make a film. I didn't go to film school and I made a film. So, I implore other people, women, anybody to just, if that's what they want to do, just to figure out how to do it, how they can sort of bridge that gap.
And that is the punk, philosophy. Anyone can do it yourself, DIY. That phrase came to prominence during punk, DIY. So you're part of that cultural continuum.
I hope so. Yeah, honorary member of punk.
Yeah, through deeds, not just words. It's important to get things done. So, well, I'm done. So thank you so much for, your forthrightness.
And
thank you so much.
I'd just like to jump in now and just thank you so much, V, for the wonderful interview and bringing all your depth of experience and passion to talking to Rubika about her film. And it really is a wonderful film. It's a film for our times. And I love what you say about having to remake history to remake the future. And it really is film. Remaking history through cinema is really important. And Rubika has done a really beautiful job of that with White Riot. It captures really the energy and exuberance of the music, which I always loved, and puts it in this amazing context of resistance and countercultural resistance, which is such a rich tradition in the Bay Area, but it shows this tradition also in the UK. So it's really a hopeful film. It's great to see films that give you hope, and also to see, people like Red and his cohort who were just pissed off and did something about it. So if I think that's the lesson to us all, is like, you can change things. You might start small. It might start grassroots. You might be writing letters, having small events, but it can grow. and if you want to start a movement, you have to do something. So I think it's a great film for our time. So I would like to thank you both very much for talking about it today, and I hope that our viewers will come to BAMPFA.org to watch White Riot and enjoy the film and just rock on, because it's great.
Thank you so much for having me. That's lovely to hear. I'm absolutely chuffed that it's screening in America, and I really hope people come to it and they they can take something away, a message of positivity. So thank you so much.
No, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.